Hello humans, this is Random Guy and welcome to the Random Channel. Today we are going to be reviewing another anime, or just more like me giving my opinions on another anime. This time we have Yosuga no Soro. By the way, the sixth episode not the sixth episode, the last chapter, the sixth chapter of Medieval Fantasy is going to be coming out in like a few days. I finally got the time to record it, so look out for that. But anyway, let's get to Yosuga no Soro. Yosuga no Soro is a show that I watched way back in the day. And recently I recommended to a friend of mine and he was like, wow, it's so fucking good. And then I was like, maybe I should rewatch it. It's been a while since I watched it. And it is just as good as I remembered. The show is about, the story seems plenty, simple. It's just a show about an orphan boy and girl, both are brothers and sisters, and they live together and they move because they don't really have any immediate relatives to take care of them, so they move to the countryside to live where they used to live when they were kids. And they move back into the house, just their daily lives of getting used to the school and the area and all that stuff. And then their relationships as they grow and move forward, against each other, along with their relationships with the people they meet, the people we are going to be seeing in the show. Now, the show is just, the show is too fucking good. Like, let me just say this first of all, the show is like R-rated. There's like sex every just 3 episodes. Every 3 episodes or 4 episodes, there's sex in the show. That's just how the show goes. So, and the sex scenes in the show are just very well made. It's not like Tokyo Ghoul, where just like they pan shot fucking manga panels onto the screen with colors and fucking, what is that, music playing in the background. Like literally that scene was shit from Tokyo Ghoul. And these ones are just way too graphic compared to those. It's literally to some extent a hentai. You could say that. It is artistic. Hentai is artistic, but what I'm trying to say, it's not just like porn. This is not porn. It's done very well. The only thing is that the sex scenes are a little bit short, but let's ignore that. They're just generally 2 to 3 minutes long. So I would say that's pretty good. That's pretty fucking good. The animation of the show is very well done. Like when you start watching the show, right? So the budget of the show is not like super high, like the movies Your Name or something, where they just the animation just looks too fucking good. And despite that, the show has done very good job on the animation. I've seen similar shows with similar type of animation, and they can't do as good a job as this one. The characters look pronounced and look beautiful wherever they are. Like there's this one scene where the sister is sitting on the train and the window is open, as far as I can remember, and the wind blows in, so her hair just goes like upwards in this fancy manner. It looks absolutely gorgeous. That with the music, the soundtrack of the show is fucking good. Like every scene, the music is just perfect. Sometimes show put some like, it feels like the music is random. Sometimes in shows, like either the music is just so like insignificant, you don't really care for it, and when the music is good or bad, it's just like thrown in there. And this one, the music is done perfectly. The music just like curves into the show. Like a particular scene was like as I said, the hair blowing scene. They would use a piano instead of something heavy, like a heavy metal. Some shows do that shit. Like like a simple scene, they would start playing heavy metal or whatever. So it just looks the music is well done with the animation. That's what I like to say. Now a lot of the shows they do this. Let me just say this is a slice of life show, and for me personally, as I've said before, slice of life shows are just not my thing. I'm not gonna say I don't watch slice of life shows. I do watch them. It's just that I just don't prefer to watch them. Most of them are trash, or even if they're not trash, they're just not my preference. So even if I watch them, it's just like, okay, I just watched them. But this one is way too different. Like, there are other shows, like Konokon and Kiss Exes, where there's like a lot of sexual activity going on. But those shows, there's a big problem that they destroy the story to promote fan service, right? I've read the manga of both Kiss Exes and Konokon, and I can tell you the shows compared to the manga are like completely different. The manga goes into like the story of the show, like the relationships between the characters, the surroundings, all that stuff that is happening. But like the show themselves, like the anime, they're just like, oh, like look, oh, the beautiful girl, big tits, doing this, doing that, that sort of thing. So they completely ignore the story. And this one, the story is heavy. It's actually a story. The story is actually heavy despite all the sex that is going on in the show. But I mean, the show is just so fucking good, despite being a slice of life. It's just like immediate negative for me. Slice of life. This show is so good. The story keeps, consistently going. Never at one point I felt like, what, I should go read the manga, maybe get some idea actually what is going on in the story. The show shows it perfectly. Now, I've not read the manga, but I can tell you the anime will suffice. The anime will suffice. Very rarely when I watch a show, so I just don't get it, I just go read the manga. It's like, okay, this is what is happening, because the show ignores that plot points and shit. But in this one, it's just done perfectly. It's very well done. Now, the show has this thing where they like to show multiple characters with the main character. Like, it's not a harem show, right? As I said, it's not a harem show. I didn't say it, but I'm saying right now, it's not a harem show, but it shows in that manner. What it does is that, let's say, first episode, right? The main character meets this girl. Now he's interested in her. And then they show like this and this and this is happening. Then they show a middle point, like two girls, one is going right, one is going left. So the main character goes left, right? And then they show whichever girl he chooses, they show her story arc, and then the main character helps her out in settling her matters, or like emotional situations and all that story related stuff. Then at the end of like third or fourth episode, they fuck and then they move on. And then what they do is that after they fuck, the next episode, they're going to rewind the time of the show to the point where he went left. And this time he's going to go right. Or they're going to rewind the time and there's going to be a third event. He's not going to be able to choose between the two sides. He's just going to go on his merry way and he's going to meet another girl. So they go for like butterfly effect sort of, to some extent, like the actions of a person or the situations that happen around them happen to change the entire thing. Like a simple thing where at one point in the story he might eavesdrop on someone, so he might get to one girl, which may lead to one girl. At another point he just doesn't want to eavesdrop, it just goes on his on his separate way. He ends up with another girl. So these events that leads to actions that leads to consequences. So one action, then another lead to different points in the story, and that is something that I think that is very well done in the show. So that's it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch because the normal shows would just go like, okay, he got one girl, now he's gonna go after the other one, and he's gonna get two girls and third girl. Now this show sticks to one girl, but they switch, right? They rewind the time, then they move forward with another one, So this is how the show does. So it's very interesting. Now the show has incest in it, right? So if you don't like incest, then I would recommend skipping the last like 2 episodes of the show. I think that's the only part where there's incest in the show. And by the way, let me just clarify this. They're not like half related, half-blooded brother and sister. They're not steps brother and sister. They're full-blooded, like the blood brothers and sisters, right? You need to remember that part. So it's proper incest, not like what is the other one called, inseki or whatever it's called. it's not that, it's full-blown incest, right? So if you don't like that, just skip the last two episodes. But personally, I like that because it adds a flavor to the story, right? The sister being into the brother, and then they get together, and then their own story arc goes forward. So look forward to that. I'm not gonna say too much. So there's that. Now the show has another thing that I personally really liked, is that the girls in the show are not they're not at all, they're just generic, they're not at all like stand out. It's like, and it's not, there's no girl in the show that's like Albedo or like Rory Mercury or Shaltia Bloodfallen or someone else that just like Rias or anyone else, right? They're just, you look at him and just like, oh, that's the main girl. Like if they took the girls in this world, right, and then they put them in any other show, that they would just look like one of those bystanders girl, like when the main character and the girls are interacting, then the other girls in the class are sitting in the back and just looking forward. They would look like that. They're that fucking generic looking, right? And despite that, at first glance it was like, okay, that's a different choice they made. Why would they choose such generic girls? Shouldn't they make them look more appealing, different, or like quirky or something? But no, they don't need to, because even despite the girls being so generic, as I said, the story makes them very interesting. Like every single girl that they're going to go into like story mode with, the show is going to properly show like the charm of them. You first of all, when you look at them, you're not gonna be interested in it. But as you slowly, apologies, my throat just dried up for whatever fucking reason. It's just like completely just dried off, and I couldn't just do, like, I couldn't breathe or whatever. So I just just paused the recording for a little bit. Whatever. So what we were talking about? So yeah, that's the thing, that they take generic girls, make them interesting using story. So I mean, look at that. Like if you take a character like let's take No Game No Life, right? Take Jabril from that show. Her character looks so interesting, and the story doesn't use her character all that much. Now when the movie came out, what was it called, No Game No Life Zero, that movie somewhat explored into her story and whatever. So that made her a lot more interesting than what she was. So I think that story adds a lot to the character. Like fan service is fine, but if you don't utilize the story properly, as this show has done, like taking the most backseater generic looking girls that have no like extraordinary characters. Like let me just say this, the show, the girls have just like a black or like brown hair for the most part. There's just one girl that has like a little bit of an orange hair, but that one's just like a funny character they put in for just fucking around. But other than that, like every single character in the show just looks normal. Yeah, that's what the character looks like. They just look normal. Another thing that I enjoyed about the show is that after you watch a show, there's a sense of emptiness to the show. Like anything that you watch, and when the show ends, you feel like this is like a feeling of emptiness inside. Like, oh, the show has ended. Like I got the feeling when Tokyo Ghoul ended. I got the feeling when like Parasite the Maxim ended. To some extent, I got the feeling when like Death Note ended, and because I just wanted these shows to continue. They're just good shows that I personally enjoyed. So there's this feeling that I'm not gonna be seeing this character anymore. This character still exists, the anime still exists, but I'm not going to be seeing this particular character anymore. There's like a feeling of like emptiness inside your chest, and that this show does that like every 4 episodes, because you get invested into a girl, then the main character gets invested in her, and then you explore their story together, which is generally a little bit on the dark end, but they explore the story together, right? So we get invested in them in like 3-4 episodes, and then all of a sudden after they get together and become boyfriend and girlfriend, the story rewinds, and then the character moves on from that girl to the other girl. But mind you, the first girl, let's just say, I'm gonna give an example, right? So main character gets together with girl A, then the time rewinds and the main character goes for girl B. But before the main character had an interaction with girl A, she had feelings for him. So now that he is going after girl B, the girl A is getting interested in the main character, and she's like, oh shit, why is my the guy I like is going after that girl instead of me. So it's just like, this is like a weird spiral of like, what is that, love triangle sort of situation that goes on. And it's amazing how they have done that, because there's like one girl likes the main character gets together with her in one arc, the rewind time. And then I'm not saying, by the way, that the main character has a time reminding power. No, as I said, it's slice of life. There's no paranormal or like extra superhuman abilities or anything. When I say time rewind, I'm just saying that the creators of the show rewind the time. That's what I'm saying. It's got nothing to do with the main character. So that's sort of like connection going on between them. So you just look at girl A that you connected for so long, for 3-4 episodes, and then she's like longing for the main character who is already together with girl B. So just like, the feeling of emptiness just kicks in after just 4 episodes, despite the fact that the show has multiple of these endings. So you again and again and again, any girl you get invested into gets like thrown out of the window after like 2-3 episodes. So there's like the continuous feeling of emptiness just keeps kicking in, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It's quite fun. It's like a new concept to some extent. It's an old show, by the way. I'm not saying it's a new show by any means, but I just watched it again, so I'm reviewing it because it has been. I actually didn't remember a lot of the show when I watched it. I'm actually watching a lot of old shows that I watched back in the day. I'm rewatching them because I don't remember them. As for the cons of the show, not really cons really, but just some me rambling literally, because there's nothing much to go against in the show. The show is pretty good by itself. So I think one of the main thing is that the sex scenes don't last very long. They're very arousing, and they're very well done. But at least I would expect like a 5 to like 7 minutes a stretch sex scene. So we're getting to connect to this girl, and then there's just like real quick fuck, and they're just like over and like move on to the next girl. That's a little bit of a thing that if they could extend it by like a 2-3 minute window, then I think the connection to the character will certainly increase. It's very well done. Let me just say this, as I said, the sex scenes are very well done, except for the fact they're not very long. So I just want to say that they should increase the fucking length of the sex scenes. Other than that, there's another thing, that there are like 2 girls in the show that they display on the screen, right? They go like, oh, there are these 2 girls also on the show, but they never really how about this? They never really went for those 2. Not saying like the character wasn't into them or anything of the sort, but it just looks like that within the 12 episodes, they only had time to do these like 3, 4, 5 girls that they were going to be displaying the story of. But I would have preferred if they would have just, at least added some OVAs after the show ended. Just like 2 or 3 OVAs where they showed those 2 girls and their stories as well. But they didn't. So I never really read the manga. Not going to either, but this show is good. So I would 100% recommend it. And despite it being a slice of life, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Because how well done the show is. If they just the characters would have been a little less generic, right? The story was pretty good, so that's not a problem. The characters should have been less generic. the fucking girls. I would have preferred a harem. I just generally prefer a harem, despite the show being this good. So this reduction in rating is because of my personal preference. So these 2 or 3 things, that the sex scenes are a little bit short. Except for that, I think the show is perfectly done. The soundtrack, animation, story, character development, everything is just, and the concept, that everything is well fucking done. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think this show fucking deserves it. All of you should just go and watch it right now. The show is very good. So thank you so much for watching. You can go and watch my hentai let's play on Dtube. There's a link in the description. Also, there's a link to my Twitter. You can go and follow me there. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.